Welcome to the special council meeting on October 21st, 2020. This meeting is being conducted in accordance with the emergency directives from Governor Sisolak. There's limited in-person attendance for the meeting. We have provided a means for people to email their public comments in. There will also be an opportunity for people to call in during the meeting with their public comments. These are in accordance with Emergency Directive 006, as modified by several directives following that. Items listed on the agenda may be taken out of order. Two or more agenda items for consideration may be combined, and any item may be removed or related discussion be delayed at any time. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we will begin with our first public comment period. Anyone wishing to call in, the phone number is 702-589-9629. Again, this is our initial public comment period.
Public comment.
Yes, I have public comment.
Go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, Council. For the record, Fred Volz. These comments will be given in the order of the agenda items. Boulder City most definitely needs a competent external firm specializing in employment and labor law to advise it regarding the city manager and city attorney positions. The last employment contracts drafted by ex-Mayor Woodbury abjectly failed to sufficiently protect the interests of the city and its residents from unqualified employees who have pursued a fast dollar. The appointment of an interim city manager presents an interesting situation. We need a placeholder to ensure the seamless operation of city government. For the recruiting process will likely take 4 to 6 months. Given the backgrounds and regular workloads of the various candidates suggested in today's agenda, the two best people to consider would be Michael Mays and Brent Spire. However, as the police chief has previously detailed, retirements from the force and the long lead time in replacing vacancies means Mr. Spire's services are needed for policing our community more than as a temporary city manager. Mr. Mays has demonstrated himself as a competent administrator, and his department has less urgent business than most of the other city departments, making him the leading choice for the interim position. Regarding the interim city attorney position, it was noteworthy that Brittany Walker attended the last city council meeting and succinctly introduced herself and her background to the community. While she has been a Nevada attorney for just 3 years, she has had experience at the state legislature, legal aid, the Regional Transportation Commission, and the State Court of Appeals, along with 2 years at White Shoe law firm Holland & Hart in their Government Affairs Division. The totality of her experience suggests she can handle the city's legal needs on an interim basis. As far as the recruiting process for permanently filling both of these positions, it is hoped that there will be a wide net cast for potential candidates, that their competence and not their connections will be the deciding factor in hiring, and that their resumes are posted for the public to review well in advance of any final selection process by City Council. It might be helpful to have several local citizens informally involved in the initial review of applications for both positions, perhaps working with the city personnel head, as a further safeguard that the best and the brightest will make it into the final round of consideration by the City Council. I would ask that these comments be added verbatim to the record. Thank you.
Thank you. The phone line is available if anyone wishes to make public comment during the initial public comment period. Again, items during this period are limited to those on the agenda. and there is a 5-minute limit on speaking. The phone number again is 702-589-9629.
Public comment.
Yes, I'd like to make public comment, please.
Go ahead.
All right. This is Judy DeShane. My public comment is I would like the council to explain a little bit about what the employment agency or employment lawyers do for us and what we have to pay them. It was in the packet, but there wasn't a lot of explanation. I would like to know more about them. So if the council could address that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. The phone line is available. Anyone wishing to call for the initial public comment period, the phone number is 702-589-9629.
Public comment.
Yes, my name is Glenn Payne. I'd like to speak, please.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to see the City Council temporarily appoint Michael Mays. Over the years since he's been with the city, I've had occasion to deal with Mr. Mays. He's always Johnny on the spot, shall we say. He has an answer. If he doesn't have the answer immediately, he gets it to you. Whenever I've observed many city council meetings where he's been in attendance, giving reports, he's clear, he's concise, he seems to be accurate in everything. I think he should definitely be considered for the temporary position and possibly be for the permanent position. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in public comment? The initial public comment period, the phone number is 702-589-9629. Again, anyone wishing to speak in the initial public comment period, the phone line is available. The number is 702-589-9629. Madam City Clerk, were there any emails? If you would go ahead with that, please.
Yes, there were 2 emails submitted. The first is from Joan Paolini regarding agenda items 2 and 3, appointing an administrative officer department head as stated in the mayor's email October 15th, 2020, in the interim until a qualified replacement is found, gives me some glimmer of hope. Why? Because the council cannot appoint an outside person. That seems to be what this council is determined to do. Do I dare mention the Boulder City Alliance as I have mentioned the last 2 council meetings? As far as the interim city attorney, only one bio from Brittany Lee Walker. Anyone else? If she is chosen as the interim city attorney, who is she? How was she chosen? Who does she know? And last but not least, I will mention again the Boulder City Alliance. Do any of the names for possible interim appointments to both positions have any ties to the Boulder City Alliance? We may never know, but as I have stated before, at least my comments and concerns are part of the record. Next is from Roger Tobler. Mayor and City Council, I oppose the direction you have taken regarding the firing of the city manager and city attorney. You did not follow the NRS and you have ignored the labor contracts you had with both. This city council is made up of only 3 that were elected, and one of those is opposed to what is happening. Your actions may have consequences and place liabilities upon the city, both legal and financial. You have already spent valuable financial resources going down this path. You have been given notice and instruction on a number of occasions, and you chose to ignore staff's advice, placing yourselves and the city in difficult positions. You are now considering to hire a city attorney that barely meets the requirements. We are experiencing difficult times. We need strong leadership. We need leaders that unite and build alliances in the community. We need leaders that respect due process and follow the NRS and the open meeting law. Although I strongly disagree with your actions regarding this meeting, and last, I do hope your time in office helps protect and maintain our unique community. And those were the only 2 submitted.
Thank you. Again, if there is anyone wishing to call for public comment, the line is available. The phone number is 702-589-9629. All right, hearing no others for public comment, we will close the initial public comment period. Move to approval of the agenda. Madam City Clerk, any changes?
Mayor, there are no changes, but I would like to note that the resumes and waivers of the potential candidates for acting city manager were sent out yesterday. They will be part of the permanent record. And then in addition, we had a late entry because Commander Spire was on vacation, and I had sent you a note earlier, but maybe you guys didn't have a chance to check your email because it was pretty recent. So I did want to note that Commander Spire had expressed his interest and signed the waiver, as well as provided his resume. Those are available to the public, and they will be part of the permanent record.
Thank you.
Oh, and I'm sorry, one additional thing that you may know, but for the public's sake, is that there were some minor modifications made for the proposed contract for the acting city attorney, and that was provided for you today via email. It's on the dais, and again, that will also be part of the record if it's approved in that way.
Thank you. Questions or comments, changes, council members? All right. Anyone wishing to make a motion then to approve the agenda?
Mayor, I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
A second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that will bring us to our first agenda item, discussion of the further retention of the law firm of Fisher Phillips to render legal advice. Mr. Bolt, did you want to make any introduction on that?
Really didn't have much more to add than what's in the staff report.
There was a comment made in public comment about this retention, and I believe you had said this is, and I know it's in the packet, that this is a firm the city's been using for some 30-odd years, I believe.
Yes, sir.
So the reason it's titled as further retention, this is a law firm that you and city staff have worked with for some time then?
Yes, sir.
And they're called upon whenever there's an issue regarding employee relationships, contracts, that type of thing?
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there some type of standard billing then that they do, or something that's already been agreed to in the past?
Yeah, we have a standard hourly rate that their attorneys charge and bill us, so just invoice us whenever we utilize their services.
All right. Any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Folda?
Thank you, Mayor. So it's my understanding that Fisher Phillips was not retained or involved in the writing of the previous contracts for the city attorney and city manager. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. That's all I had.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Hoskins?
Yes. Could you tell us what other contracts that they have written? And you've stated that they were not involved in the last contracts. Were they involved in the city manager or the city attorney's contracts, or neither one?
They were involved with neither one.
Neither one. So we've had them for over 30 years?
Yes.
We've used them? Okay, so you find them to be competent?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else? All right, anyone wishing to make a motion then to continue with their services?
I would like to make a motion. I would like to direct staff to facilitate the further retention of the law firm of Fisher Phillips for legal advice on labor and employment issues related to the position of the city manager and the city attorney. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that will bring us to item number 2, appointment of the acting city manager. Again, Mr. Bolt, I hate to single you out, but is there anything you would like to say in introduction of this?
Only that you have many fine prospects in front of you today.
All right. And again, this appointment is the result of the termination of the contract for the previous city manager. The process that has been used here is to have the council members submit any names that they desire for being considered. We've also asked those that were named as a candidate to submit a waiver regarding a 5-day rule that may be required in situations like this. I believe all have now. Madam City Clerk had pointed out earlier that Commander Spire had been, I guess, out of town or unavailable, and upon his return, he did submit that as well as his resume as well. At this point, I will open it up then. Any nominations or questions, comments from council? Councilman Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I just wanted to start before we get into nominations or hearing from any of the candidates that each candidate that is here today, I think, and who has expressed an interest in the acting city manager position brings with them knowledge, unique skill sets that will be paramount in successfully managing this transition period, regardless of who might be appointed. So whatever decision council makes today, I believe that it will be with the hope and the intent that we are all able to come together, rally behind the best interest of this city, which we've all sworn an oath to. So I just wanted to make sure that I took this time to recognize and thank every one of you guys here for all of your hard work and dedication to the city. It is definitely noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, along the same lines, having read all of the resumes and giving it a lot of thought, I thought, it's interesting that each one of these candidates brings in a different perspective, a different side of what's sort of a different, multifaceted job. I know that the several names that rose to the top with me had to do with overarching management background and financial experience, where I know that each one has a budget and budgetary knowledge. I know for me there were several that rose to the top in terms of being able to take on this task. But I do want to thank everybody who put in their names and were willing to stand up for this, because there are some really good choices.
Councilmember Hoskins?
Yes, I'm saying the same thing. After reviewing all the resumes, as usual, Boulder City is so fortunate to have so many qualified employees to serve and that can serve as acting city manager. And I would like to thank all of you for coming and participating in this endeavor.
Councilmember Folda?
Thank you. I wasn't able to speak with all the candidates just because of lack of time, but for all those that I was able to speak with, they all gave support to whomever is chosen. And for that reason, I think that we do have a very good team of Boulder City, that our directors all work very well one another and support one another and trying to do the best for Boulder City as a team. Before we jump in, though, I did want to talk about terms of the employment before we start talking nominations. I don't know what the process is going to be, or if you're going to jump straight into nominations.
I don't believe, I believe you can go ahead if you have questions about that.
So I just, when reading through this, it seems to be clear that what the intent is to have whoever is appointed to carry out their duties that they're regularly assigned to, in addition to the appointment of the acting city attorney, and that also the salary base would bump up to what the city manager's base pay would be, and not having two concurrent pays. So I just want to make sure for the record that's clarified so that there's no confusion there.
And I believe any arrangement, Mr. Bull, would you care to comment on that?
You're absolutely right in that they'll be assuming the duties of it that they currently have, and that the addition. But of course, all staff is here to help them out and disperse those as we can. With respect to the compensation, you're correct in that it would go to the base, but their current salary would be inclusive in that. Okay.
Mayor, I just wanted to point out, too, along the same lines as Councilmember Folda, in the resolution that's included in the packet, there's I guess it would be an error that says the acting city manager will continue to perform his or her duties in addition to the duties of city manager. That city manager would be whatever position they're currently serving in, of course, and I'll make that change depending on who's appointed.
Yeah, I believe that's the third whereas of Resolution 7171. All right. And we can, you know, when we get to that point, if someone wants to make a motion, that amendment can be noted. Any other questions or comments? I would just like to say as well that, we're going through a period of change here. There's no question about that. I sincerely appreciate the short notice everyone had for this, but the care that I think people took in providing the council members with additional information about their backgrounds. I know, I've known many of you now for 2 or 3 years, and looking at this, it does bring a new perspective to some of the talents that people bring to their positions, and the fact that we had so many willing to take on a task like this. I won't say it's thankless, because obviously there is a little bit of an increase in the compensation, but it will be an additional burden for certain for whoever is selected. I think that when we look at a position like this, or as I look at it, I agree with some of the comments that have already been made, that there are folks that come at this from different perspectives, but all with the intent to see that the city continues to function smoothly. And with that, I guess I will go ahead and name Michael Mays. I believe that Michael has been in a position not as long as other directors here, but he certainly has been among the longer serving directors. And I think his background and experience is the type that we need in this particular situation right now. Again, I'll open that up. Any other considerations, any other comments? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you. No, I was planning on also nominating Michael Mays. I think for me, one of the unique aspects is his participation in all the volunteer time and his presence in the community. I think those in the community have become very familiar with him, and I think that is an important and unique aspect that he brings that I think is very important towards managing this transition period.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Folda?
Thank you. I agree that Michael is an excellent choice. My only concern would be the workload, and I know that would be distributed, but he is on the EOC and community development, and I know that he's stepped in several times as acting city manager and has done well. But my nominations today would be both Keegan Luttrell and Brett Spire. I think Mr. Luttrell would be an excellent choice in this, and that he's worked with budgets and works with all the departments and working through a lot of the things that he does in his day-to-day job. I think his commitment to communication would be a benefit to the city at this time when we've had a lot of that communication cut off between staff and the city council in the past. And for Commander Speyer, he was nominated by his peers, and I think that stands out a lot for someone that has respect of those that he works with, and is honest in his duties and is a hard worker. And so for those 2 nominations that I have today.
Anyone else? Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, thank you. It's interesting. The 2 names that came to the top for me were Diane Pelletier, because of she has the management background and has brought a level of transparency and clarity to our finances, and I think there's a lot of confidence in her. Yet Michael Mays also was the one that I strongly felt had the background, and I agreed that it was his presence in the community and that people know who he is and trust him, and that he has made Boulder City user-friendly, that people working with the planning department and community development have found it now to be accessible, and I think that's a very important aspect of our city as a whole. So I would also stand behind Michael Mays.
So are you requesting both Mr. Mays and Ms. Pelletier?
No, Mr. Mays. He only because of his background with the city and his reputation in the city as a whole. Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Hoskins?
This is very difficult. I have 3, Michael Mays, Commander, and Keegan. But I would go with Michael.
Okay. We have 3 names then, Mr. Luttrell, Mr. Mays, and Mr. Spire. I guess we could take these one at a time then. We'll do it in alphabetical order. All those in favor of appointing Keegan Luttrell as the acting city manager, please raise your hand. Okay, we have 1 for Mr. Luttrell. All those in favor of Mr. Mays, please raise your hand. We have 4. And all those in favor of Mr. Spire, please raise your hand.
You can only vote once.
Well, we've had situations where that didn't occur, but, all right. Again, this is obviously a weighty matter, and Mr. Mays, if you're willing to accept this position, you have the support of a majority of the council for that. If you'd like to come to the podium and make any comments.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of City Council. Thank you very much for your vote of confidence. I want to echo, though, what all of you expressed, is that you're very fortunate that you have such talented and dedicated department managers and employees within this organization. I am very confident that we will work together to accomplish the needs of this community, and I will be dedicated to the citizens of our community, the council, and my fellow employees in being successful during this transition period. So thank you.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate your willingness to take this position on. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Folda?
Thank you. I just want to correct what Mayor said. He has the support of the entire council on this. And I just want you to know that you have my support as well. Even though you weren't nominated, I do find that you would be an excellent candidate as well. So thank you, Michael, for being up to this job.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone else? Again, thank you, Mr. Mays.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we will move to item number 3 then, the appointment of the acting city attorney. Again, Mr. Bolt, would you like to make an introduction on this?
Absolutely.
Oh, excuse me. Before we move, yes.
Oh, the resolution.
Yes, my apologies. Anyone wishing to make a motion on Resolution 7171? Councilmember Folda?
Thank you. I move to approve Resolution 7171, but amending the whereas number 3 to the duties of the Community Development Director. Is that the correct title? Okay, thank you.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor as amended?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Now we'll move on to item number 3, appointment of the acting city attorney.
Very good. And your nominee, Ms. Walker, is here today, and I'm sure she'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Ms. Walker, would you like to come to the podium? You know, I would just like to say that, you know, people love drama, mysteries, things like that. You know, I had reached out to someone that I'm confident in, asking for recommendations, and the recommendation that came back was for Ms. Walker. I think that in situations like this, this is an interim appointment. We will be discussing the recruiting process for a permanent replacement later on. Again, I would like to set aside any drama about this by just saying that, you know, people reach out to others that they know and ask for suggestions. So that was how Ms. Walker's name came to my attention. I have spoken with her several times. I've reviewed her resume. I think it's an outstanding example of a well-rounded experience that will benefit us through this transition period. So I think that's a critical factor in getting through this so that we can make considerations for a permanent replacement. And again, with that, Ms. Walker, if you'd like to make comments, please.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. I am not currently a resident of Boulder City, and I'm not from here, so I'd like to introduce myself again. At the last City Council meeting, I spoke a few words about my background, but just in the interest of making sure everyone knows who I am, I'm Brittany Lee Walker. And I'm so honored to be considered for this acting city attorney position. I have grown up in Southern Nevada. I've always loved Boulder City. I've come here since I was a kid. My husband and I really appreciated the historical significance and made it a point we wanted to get married here. And we were married at Grace Community Church by Pastor Dave Graham, and had our reception at the Boulder Dam Hotel. And so this city is near and dear to my heart. About my background, I hold 2 degrees from Nevada higher educational institutions, UNLV and William S. Boyd School of Law, Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, and a Juris Doctor from Boyd. Upon graduating law school, I clerked for now Justice Abby Silver when she was on the Court of Appeals. And during that time, I was exposed to all different areas of law, civil, criminal. I learned quite a lot in that experience in that short amount of time. Specifically with respect to what's relevant to the city, I researched and assisted the judges in drafting an opinion called Glover Armont v. Cargile, which addressed sovereign immunity and discretionary act immunity. So I have a good background on sovereign immunity, which is something that I'm sure the city, that faces the city on a regular basis. I am barred in Arizona and Nevada. Prior to law school, I worked for the Nevada Assembly. I was the policy advisor to the majority leader in the 2013 session and assisted the leadership office in tracking various bill measures and putting together policy presentations for the bills that the Assembly majority leader introduced, and I also drafted amendments, things like that. Upon conclusion of the 2013 legislative session, I applied to law school. Knowing I really wanted a career in public policy is where I found my passion. And so during law school, I clerked for the Regional Transportation Commission for 7 months and was exposed to a lot of different areas affecting public agencies and municipalities, public records law, open meeting law, public works. I assisted in drafting contracts, wrote various memoranda on researching issues of law affecting the public agency. Through that, I was acquainted with Holland & Hart, their outside counsel for RTC, and was lucky enough to be offered an associate position there upon conclusion of my clerkship. And I've worked the past 2 years there doing a mix of government affairs, but also government and regulatory legal work, again, reviewing and drafting transactional documents, interlocal agreements, development agreements, services agreements. I'm very familiar with NRS 333 and local government purchasing, public records law, public ethics law, zoning, business licensing, economic development, things like that. and I have an understanding of how these laws work in practice, and I'll be able to assist the city in interpreting how, should various legislative measures start to be introduced for the 2021 session. I already started tracking that, and will help, if appointed, will help the city in analyzing how those legislative measures would affect the city. And with my legal experience, I, in preparation for this role, I reviewed NRS Chapter 268, governing municipal powers. I reviewed the Boulder City Charter very closely, as well as other relevant authorities. So I believe I'm fully prepared to be your acting city attorney, and I would be honored to have your vote today. And I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, first of all, I wanted to say I really enjoyed our conversation the other day and had an opportunity to understand a little bit more about you and your background. I do have a question. When did you pass the bar in Nevada?
When did I pass the bar?
In Nevada, yes.
October of 2017.
Okay.
October, I think 10th.
October 10th.
Is my on my certificate where I'm admitted to practice.
So you just eke under the 3-year, over the 3-year practice.
Yes, I would say though that I've had a significant amount of experience with Nevada statutory schemes. In 2013, I also interned in 2011 for the leadership office. So I've worked a total of 4 legislative sessions and have a lot of experience with NRS.
Okay. I was just looking at our city attorney description in the charter, talking about the actual practice of law in the state of Nevada for at least 3 years preceding his or her appointment. So that's what I was curious about. I saw when you graduated and your experience, but I was just curious about that specific time.
Oh, I see. I didn't mean to sound. I just was. Thank you for the question.
No, but again, I'm impressed with your background for someone who's just recently been practicing law.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you. I think you did address this pretty eloquently, but just in case, there have obviously been concerns, I think, the limited experience. Obviously, I like to look at this as an opportunity for Boulder City to maybe have a fresh perspective in our legal department. But what would you say to those who might have some of those concerns that your limited experience, might be a detriment or not up to the task? What would you say to allay some of those concerns from residents here who might share those?
Sure, and I understand that, and I appreciate that I am new to the practice of law, and relatively young for a city attorney. I would say that what I lack in experience, I make up for in tenacity and diligence. And in the 3 years I have been admitted to practice law, I have tried to perfect that practice full time, working weekends most of the time. And it's been an intensive career so far. Past 2 bars, and I think that I hope to demonstrate my capability in this interim role, should I be appointed today, and hopefully inspire confidence in the residents that I'm able to represent the city competently and professionally.
And I guess just to clear the air, as when the mayor had mentioned drama, I'd seen some comments that perhaps, when I introduced you at the last council meeting, that we were somehow friends or acquaintances or already knew each other. Had we ever spoken or met prior to you reaching out and expressing an interest in this position?
No, Councilman Adams, we had not.
Thank you. I think it's important for us to all be transparent, because I know sometimes people like to make up stories in their head. For everybody's interest, Mrs. Walker did reach out to me directly, and then I in turn reached out to others who I have confidence in their opinion, who also highly recommended Mrs. Walker. So I do have total confidence in your ability to fulfill this role.
Thank you, Councilman.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Hoskins?
Well, thank you for coming and being on board. You're going to be under the microscope, you know that. You'll make it. I think I can see you're a strong young lady, and welcome to being on board with us.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Councilmember Boulder?
Thank you. I just want to say that I'm pleased with this appointment. I don't think she has, I don't think she lacks in anything that we need for the city right now. Her exposure to lots of different laws and the way things work in Nevada, I think it gives quite a bit of experience. What I do appreciate about her also is reading up on not only NRS, which is very important to go to the law when you're, giving advice on the law, but also our charter and our city codes and knowing, what the background of Boulder City is, we are a small town and we kind of get into each other's business a little bit, and I think you've kind of been exposed to that now. But I think that you will do a good job for the city. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
And I would just say that Ms. Walker and I did meet, I think it was probably 8 or 10 years ago at the Electric Light Parade, having absolutely no idea that we would be in this situation 8 or 10 years later. But yes, we have met at some point in the past, and it was a fleeting introduction, but here we are today. Again, there's been a lot of comments about, number of years and all this. When I look at the totality of the experience that you'll be bringing, I very much appreciate your background at the legislature. We have a government here, and government is made up out of laws, and you've been working in that field for a decade. I think that's extensive experience and will serve the community very well. I also want to point out that a proposed contract was sent to you yesterday. You had an opportunity to review that. You had contacted me this morning and suggested a couple of changes to that. The compensation, the total compensation had been identified. I'm not sure the math that was used to identify it, but I believe it was $186,000. You expressed to me that you are willing to reduce that down to the $170,000 that was the base salary for the prior city attorney. And you also had requested the addition of a clause in there, the other employment, if you'd like to discuss what that is.
Sure. Yes, and I will just confirm, yes, I requested that the salary be reduced to 170, as that was what I believe the position for the prior city attorney was. So I requested that change. And for the other change I requested in section 5, and I have a copy I can give to the clerk if you'd like.
Yeah, okay. I believe that all the council members do have copies, and copies will be made available to the public as well, showing the change.
Okay. Yes, so section 5 and other employment. I volunteer still with Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada, and I've been volunteering with the Small Business Assistance Program, and I'd like to continue that work. A lot of small businesses are facing commercial eviction, things like that. I've been helping provide legal advice and representation on those matters. So I proposed an amendment that would just make it clear that while I won't take other employment away from the city, it does not prohibit me from doing pro bono work as long as that pro bono legal advice representation does not in any way interfere with the performance of acting attorney responsibilities that, if appointed, I would have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments about the proposed changes? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you. Would any of that pro bono work potentially put you into any type of lawsuit with another public body or the state or anything like that that could potentially pose? I know it might not directly be related to Boulder City, but things kind of political nature. Is there any chance that pro bono work could lead to that type of representation?
If that were the case, Thank you, Councilman Adams, for the question. If that were the case, I wouldn't take the representation. I would avoid being adverse to any public body of the state being a public official. I think that although maybe Boulder City wouldn't be in direct conflict, I do think that with NRS 281A that there would be some ethical concerns with that. And so if there were any risk of that occurring, I would not undergo that representation.
So would you be agreeable to then to say that as long as the matter involving pro bono, as long as it is not a matter involving the state or any city, county, town, or political subdivision?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions regarding these proposed changes on the contract? Councilmember Hoskins?
Oh, yes, I just have a comment. I think you're probably the first person who's ever reduced their salary before they started.
All right, well, I guess then we are at the point where we can consider Resolution 7172, approving the agreement as amended. Anyone wishing to make that motion? Councilmember Folda?
Mayor, I move to approve Resolution 7172.
With?
What are we, with changes to the salary and contract scope of work.
Section 5, I believe it is.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I just would like to, that I did want to make sure that we did have in there that so long as it is not a matter involving the state or of any city, county, town, or public or political subdivision in the contract, in the pro bono work.
And Ms. Walker, is that acceptable?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. To Councilman Adams' question, yes, that is acceptable.
I will accept.
Councilmember Folda, do you wish to accept the?
Yes, I accept that amendment.
Thank you.
Yes, that we allow the pro bono so long as it is not a matter involving the state or any city, county, town, or political subdivision.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And now we will move to our last item, the recruitment process for permanent replacements of the city manager and city attorney. Again, Mr. Bolt.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Bryce Bolt, Administrative Services Officer. I was hoping that we could have a discussion about how you might like to go forward with recruitment to fill these 2 vacant positions. And that would be an executive search firm, and then unless you want to abbreviate that in some way, I just wanted to have the discussion. Maybe we can get that ball rolling.
Thank you. Any questions or comments regarding that possible process? Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, hi. I guess my opinion is to go for the hybrid, notwithstanding cost, because to me it's to get the qualified and quality individual to hold those 2 positions. It should not be a budgetary issue. However, I do think we have the resources in-house in order to evaluate, rank, interview, coordinate background, investigation. Issues like that, I do believe, could be handled outside. On the other hand, it would be favorable to have an executive search firm that would actually assist in that process to be able to use their resources to find those people most interested and best qualified. So that's my thought on it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Folda?
Thank you. I just had some questions for Mr. Bolt. If you could elaborate a little bit on the hybrid, on what executive search firm would do versus internal, and like if any of those things would differ, say like the scope of the background or, you know, how the contract would be written, things like that. Could you kind of elaborate on who would do what and what could then be done internally, and if that would be different from what the external would be doing?
Sure. And the hybrid can go however council sees fit. I would say the executive search term would go out, in the case of the city manager nationwide, through their various publications. They develop a recruitment brochure. They then would receive applications and resumes. They would rank them or determine who's most qualified and present that to council. And then internally, we could set up interviews for that, and then when selected, do a background investigation, which is fingerprinting, criminal background investigation. And the contract negotiations, you know, that would not fall under me, only because of the conflict, particularly with city manager, who I would answer to eventually. And negotiations, while not always adversarial, do have some sense of, you want this, I want that, so that would not be conducive to a working relationship. That I would recommend that we go to an outside, perhaps outside counsel, legal counsel.
And would any of this, with the executive, you know, it's not been very long since this was done before. So, I mean, is there any of that part of in-house? They don't need to recreate the wheel, just update it. That would cut down on cost at all?
Well, absolutely. You know, we have a recruitment brochure, and the fundamentals of that haven't changed. We'd update it a bit, but we've got that product, and we could go to the external and say, we can save a couple bucks by having this brochure, utilize this, and we have professional memberships that would allow discounted advertisements in certain publications. So that too is another way to kind of knock those dollars down a little bit.
Anyone else? Councilmember Hoskins?
Yes, on the executive search firm, it looks like they do almost everything for us, right?
They certainly can.
Would you consider this to be more transparent if we went this route, even though it's expensive? But then of course, we have two very important positions, and we don't want to be cheap if we're filling those two positions. I'm looking at it, I am thinking that maybe that's the most transparent, even though it costs us more. And probably we would have the least backlash from everyone in the community as to, you know, if we go internal, then I think we're going to have some backlash. So in order to alleviate that, I think the executive search is a better selection.
Anyone else?
I just said that I do appreciate those comments because it's an aspect that I hadn't considered myself. Obviously, you know, a hybrid approach always sounds good. You get the best of both worlds, but I do think transparency is obviously of great concern to many here in our community, and so that might actually be a very good way of making sure and ensuring that transparency is there. So just those are my comments.
I've been through this process before when I was a member of the city council. I think the executive search recruiting process is probably worth the money. Again, we've spoke earlier today. We certainly have candidates that are already on staff. And again, I would encourage all those that are interested, you know, as this process moves forward, to express your interest. I think that we would all be willing to entertain any of the internal candidates. But as Councilmember Hoskins pointed out, these are significant positions, and I think that we owe the community the opportunity for us to go out and look at different candidates. The process that was used last time was to have two members of the council act as liaisons with the recruiting firm. Something I did not like about that process is that there was some elimination of resumes by those two people. I think that we should consider having two members of council be the liaisons, but would not be making any decisions, not be rejecting any resumes. But as important as this process is, to have input that can be brought back to the council as we move through the process and have people be aware of what's going on, I think that's important for us to do. The recruitment firm that was used last time, I know they were very open to being contacted by members of council and discussing the process with them. That's certainly an opportunity that would still be available to any council member. But I really do think that having a committee like that, a subcommittee, is important to get this process going. Make sure that it stays on track, make sure that the council is informed of how it's moving along. So that would be my proposal, is that we do the executive search. We have two members of the city council that would act as liaisons. Again, that would not be in any manner making decisions about which resumes to accept or reject, just simply being able to report back to the council at future meetings. Again, the process was used last time. I think there was some benefit to it, but I don't believe that those two people should be making any decisions about what to accept or reject as far as resumes go. Any discussion, comments?
Yeah, I do agree, I guess, with the sentiments that have been made, especially if we're having internal applicants, it would be best to do it, externally so that there's not some awkward conflict within City Hall, on top of that. So that's just my thought.
And the previous executive search firm that we used, we could use them again, or if you wanted to do an RFP to determine what executive search firm we wanted to use,
It would be my preference, perhaps at the next meeting, if we can get that scheduled. If you could come back with some recommendations, okay. Allow us to look at the various firms that are out there. I believe last time you had come back with several, 3 or 5, I don't recall the number, but to have us have the opportunity to take a look at that. I don't know that we need necessarily a full RFP process, but certainly the opportunity to consider some various firms.
Very good, I can do that.
Any other thoughts on that matter? All right, well, if we're going to go that direction, then my direction would be, I believe that I would be able to serve the council well in a position as one of those two. Anyone else having an interest in that? Councilmember Folda?
Yeah, I would have interest being on that as well.
Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, I would be very interested in being on that, being one of the two selected, please.
Anyone else?
I would be interested also.
Well, it may just turn out we'll have special council meetings to do all of that.
At this time, I believe I do have other duties and priorities right now that I have to deal with, and I don't know that I would be capable of adhering to all of that additional work and the due diligence that would be required. So I am not interested in that position at this time.
All right. Anyone wish to defer to the other?
I'll go first. I'll defer.
To any particular member, or?
I'll defer to Councilmember Folda.
All right. I would also defer to Councilmember Folda. So, again, I appreciate everyone's interest in that. Do we need a formal motion on this?
Yes, we would, and I would not appoint the people to this committee until it comes back before you when you can discuss the RFP or the other firms, because it's not agendized. And then we can make it an A and a B discussion about the firms, appointment to the subcommittee, or to yeah, I guess it would be, I won't call it a subcommittee because those are bound by the open meeting law too, but to choose the 2 council members to act as the liaison.
All right. Mr. Bolt, is that something that you might be able to prepare?
Yes, sir, I can do that.
Okay. Any questions or comments if we go that direction then?
I agree, it's the right direction to go.
Any other questions or comments? All right then, we will look
Mayor?
forward to that.
I'm sorry, we do need a formal motion to clarify the exact direction you want to go with the executive firm. So we will need a motion on that, please.
Fine, thank you for that. I will then move that the direction will be to go with an executive search firm for a national search.
I would second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. With that, we will move to our last public comment period. Anyone wishing to make public comment, the phone number is 702-589-9629. Again, this is our final public comment period. Comment during this period may be on any issue. The phone number is 702-589-9629.
Public comment.
Yes, I'd like to make public comment.
Go ahead.
All right, this is Judy DeShane calling. I would like the council, it can't be done now, but maybe at the next meeting or whatever, to take a look at the salary ranges. I checked Transparent Nevada this morning, and we were paying, our total cost for Mr. Noyola and Mr. Morris was almost $500,000. We were just shy of $500,000 for the 2 of them. For a town of 16,000, and that counts every man, woman, and child, that seems like a heck of a lot of money, and I think we need to put some limits on there and make that reasonable. While people need a living wage and whatnot, by all means, and should be compensated for their abilities, it's ridiculous to put that amount of money out in this size town. Thank you.
Thank you. The line is available if anyone wishes to call in for public comment. The phone number is 702-589-9629. This is the final public comment period. The phone number is 702-589-9629.
Yes, my name is Glenn Fan. I'd like to make a public comment.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to thank the city council and stuff for their deliberations this afternoon and their attempt to make sure that everything is above board and transparent. I think it's what the town needs, and it appears to me that the city council is doing their absolute best to make this whole process transparent and fair for all concerned. Thank you, city council.
Thank you. Again, the phone line is available. Anyone wishing to speak in the final public comment period, the phone number is 702-589-9629. Madam City Clerk, did we have any emailed comments? None? Thank you. And anyone wishing to call in for public comment, the phone number is 702-589-9629. Hearing no others, I will close the public comment period. Again, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all of the directors and managers who support this process, who put themselves forward for this. We will be looking at the permanent process as we've discussed. Again, thank you all for the support on this. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.